It's time to save, New Jersey. New Jersey's Clean Energy Program is your guide to rebates and incentives that can save hundreds, even thousands of dollars for businesses and residents throughout the state by making smarter energy choices. Start today with an energy assessment. We're lighting the way to a clean energy future. Join in at njcleanenergy.com or call 866-NJ-SMART.
Alright, hi everyone! I'm here to teach you how to include environmental justice and environmental education activities. So the activity that I did today was adapted from Fishing for Answers in an Urban Estuary, which is an ANJEE DEP resource, but I made some changes, so I'll explain that to you now. So what you'll need is a way to let the students know what animal they are. So there are 3 animals in the activity. There are oysters, there are crabs, and there are humans. I chose to let folks know by giving them a little necklace, and they're numbered as well. So we have oysters and crabs and humans. So what the oysters do is you explain to the students that oysters don't move after they become adults, and they filter feed. So they take the water in from around them and get food that way. So I made a lot of krill or phytoplankton for the oysters to eat. You can also just use like little plastic dots or really anything that are different colors for the oysters to gobble up. And I also include, whenever I'm using things that are different colors, a way for students who are colorblind to know what color it is in case they can't see it like other people do. So you have the oysters all assigned. They each get a paper plate to collect their krill on, and they just sit out in a lawn or the center of the room, spread out, and then you go around the room and you toss the krill everywhere. The oysters will be sitting, and they'll have to use their arms to bring the water around them and try to capture the krill. After they catch as much as they can, you ask the students how many of each color they have, and you document it on a scoreboard. And the scoreboard is here. So you can see here, I have oyster number 1, oyster number 2, and it says they had X amount of red, orange, yellow, green, blue. And you do that for each student, and then it is the crab's turn. So the oysters will leave all the krill that they captured on their plate and evacuate the play area, and then the crabs will come out. So the crabs have to use something to mimic tongs when they are doing this activity. So I used clothespins, which worked for the item that I was using for the phytoplankton, but you can also use tongs or really anything that will act claw-like. And the oysters or the crabs have to go around and eat what the oysters had collected on their paper plates. I usually give a minute and a half to do this, but if it looks as though the students are really struggling, I give them more time. If they're knocking it out of the park, I give them less. So the crabs will scuttle around, eat the krill from the oysters, and after the time runs out, you do the same thing where you ask how many of each color they have, and then the humans come out to play. So I gave the humans balled up socks, and they had to toss gently a sock to tag one of the crabs that was running around in the play area, and if the crab got tagged, then they would be out, and they would have to forfeit their krill to the human. So after you are done with all of those 3 stages, and you have everyone's numbers for every color that they got, you start seeing what color is, how the colors are laid out, and you get to choose which of your favorite colors is actually a toxin. So the way that I like to do this to illustrate the point of the activity is that if it kills about 2 or 3 of the oysters, gets 50% of the crabs, and then will definitely kill the human. So I usually say for an array like this, let's say if you had more than 2 orange krill, then unfortunately those were toxic and that buildup in your body died. So you can see as you go down, there's a couple of oysters that get knocked out by that 2 orange. More of the crabs are past that threshold, and then the human is clearly past that threshold. So this is technically a biomagnification activity, but then at the end you just try to figure out, well, why is this human fishing in waters that have lots of toxins in them? what does that mean for environmentalists? How can we make sure that people aren't doing this, but what if they need to fish? And then you kind of just build out from there to incorporate the element of environmental justice, which is thinking how environmental inequities affect different communities differently. And that's So, hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I work for the Coalition for the Delaware River Watershed. I'm their engagement coordinator, and in that role I do absolutely no environmental education. But don't worry, I'm still qualified to be here today. So, before joining the Coalition, I was a watershed ambassador. Yeah, I see the pin. So I was a watershed ambassador in Watershed Management Area 4, which is the same thing. I was in Newark and Patterson. We were in the city. It was great. So I understood that like a lot of these kids hadn't like gone out and like pilfered through a forest like a lot of like traditional environmental education activities. And previous to my role as a watershed ambassador, I spent a lot of time looking at dead oysters to see if there was dioxin in them. So I was like, well, I like ecotoxicology. I like working in the city. I like these kids. So how am I going to make them have a good time? So what I started doing with a lot of the activities that the New Jersey Watershed Ambassador Program taught me, and also that I just like pilfered from online, was integrating different parts of environmental justice into the activities that I'm taking, so they're more interesting for me and more interesting for the kids and a little bit more pertinent for the audience that I had. So we are going to play one of these games that I created, or I guess adapted. So this game originally is from Fishing for Answers in an Urban Estuary. It's an NJDEP resource. So I took that. I was a watershed ambassador, so we had to get an X amount of hours. So I made all these bad boys. Hello. Because I don't know what's happening. I'll do this. So I made all those because I had a lot of hours to kill. And then we are going to start. So everyone, we can be oysters, crabs, and we need one special human. But if everyone can like kind of get their chairs out of the way, and then you can come up and choose your favorite animal. And by that, you're probably going to be an oyster. We need a human, I think.
I was not participant in this food chain last time, so I am going to. Although somebody with a good arm needs to be the salt monkey there.
Right. I'm going to redeem myself as a crab.
Can I be the human?
Yeah, you want to be the human?
You have a good arm? Like, just don't bruise me.
So focused.
I just don't want to have to go on the ground again as a
Okay, that is part of the fun.
Humans on top.
Here you go.
Yeah, so just say hi to me. Like, hi. We enter together.
Can I just give it a shot of you as an oyster?
Put your oyster number one in my heart. Okay, who's an oyster?
I need a lemon oyster.
Get excited.
I'm excited. Tell me what to do.
Sit down, or like you squat.
You're talking about two things that are hard, right?
And oysters are stationary, so you cannot move, but phytoplankton will be plentiful, don't you
Oh man.
Thrill factory.
And then you just collect them and try to get them on your plate, but also you can't like move your butt. Oysters?
Oh wait, do we use the
Any other
flavor? I guess either? Where would I go? Oh, my tummy's too big.
I know. I was using my plate.
Too far away. Oh yeah, I try to go
Reach.
every year. I think that's reasonably the last thing I can reach.
Oh, you can get that red one if you really.
And without moving,
If you really believe.
I think that's cheating.
What an honest oyster.
I'm sorry.
Oysters are known for their moral conviction. All right, who wants to be number one? Because there are no rules anymore.
No, I just can't.
Yes.
I have 2 yellows, 4 greens, 2 oranges, and 1 blue.
How many oranges?
2 oranges.
Love it. Number 2. Anyone can be number 2.
Okay, I'll be number 2. Okay, so 3 yellows, 5 greens, 2 blues, a red, and 2 oranges.
Who wants to be number 3?
I'll be 3. I have 4 blue, 4 orange, 4 green, 2 yellow,
Oh my lord.
and 9 red.
Hope red's not the point of them.
Who wants to be number 4?
I can be number 4. I have 5 yellows, 3 greens, 3 blue, 2 red, 3 orange.
Great. Number 5, anyone?
All right, I've got 4 blue, 1 orange, and 2 yellow.
And is there anyone else that I missed? Number 6.
I have 1 red, 2 yellow.
All right, perfect. Crabs. Oysters, leave the field. Put your things on your plates.
Right now.
Crabs, use your little clothespins and your bags to go absolutely bananas. You have a minute and a half. Ready, set, go. Go.
Oh, I don't want the polluted oyster.
It might not be red.
They don't know it'll be.
So it could be red, but it might not be.
Perhaps. Also, sometimes if you do this activity over and over again with classrooms, they're like, well, I'm just not going to eat anything. So I'm like, starvation.
And then you die. You die if you don't eat. I'm just going to eat this entire oyster. Nom, 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 nom. I know these oysters are very good.
She's like, you're thirsty.
I can't get Hi, hi, hi,
Wait, there's more crab?
I almost lost my foot. Thank you for knowing that. We appreciate it. Hey, 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 hey! The bag!
This is how David Attenborough feels when just like watching the crabs.
It's also like try not to touch the other hand.
Wee-woo, crab time over.
Okay.
All right, it is time for counting. Love the enthusiasm. Who would like to be crab number 1? I guess the fastest counter.
Alright. Crab number 1 has 4 yellows, 1 red, 3 orange, 3 green, 4 blue.
Crab number 2.
I have 4 yellows, 2 blue, 5 green, 2 orange, 1 red, and 1 more yellow. I can't count.
Okay, crab number 3.
I have 4 yellow, 2 blue, 2 green, 3 orange, and 1 magenta. Hey, yo, it's magenta, right?
Beautiful. Oh, I missed 1!
Oh!
2 reds! You can't count. I can't.
Magenta.
Crab number 4.
I had trouble regurgitating
red,
my...
3 orange, 1 green, and 1 blue.
Love it. Crab number 5.
I have 3 orange, 2 yellow, 5 blue, 1 red, and 2 green.
All right, everyone put your things back in your bags. The human has come out to play.
Can we use our hands?
Yes.
Oh, right. Oh, we're gonna shoulder. Oh, right. We're gonna die now.
Now we gotta
I know I have the same ammo, but I got more crabs to hit. I'm a little nervous. As long as I get 3, I'll feel like I made the mark.
You can do it. You just have to focus fire. You just have to concentrate on one and take it down.
Crab scuttle. Scuttle.
All right.
Can I move? How far can I go?
I mean, don't
You know.
go next to them.
You did get me, yeah. Oh, I missed her. Oh, she's running.
It's a scuttle.
You did. No, who didn't I get yet? I didn't get hey. Oh.
Where do you
Oh,
go?
good. Oh, what's this? Was he commercial crabber now? She's done. Forgot it. You know what I want to say to you, but I'm not gonna. Ah, I tricked her.
Beautiful.
I am out of ammo. I got 4.
If you were caught, give your pearl to him, and now he has to count.
You survive.
Congratulations.
Should we just make a pile?
Yeah, just dump them off.
Carry on, sir.
Alright, hold on. This is going to take a second.
Can I be done here? Can I be done here?
Well, that's a lot. Alright. 11 red. 12 blue. 10 yellow. 8 green. 12 orange.
You are a well-fed
Get excited, folks. The poison color was yellow.
Oh man.
My dude, you're dead.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So that made it so 3 of the 5 crabs died. Very unfortunate. And 2 of the oysters died, and there were 6 of those.
And the only crab that wasn't caught still died because I had a lot of yellow.
Oh,
Man.
wow.
That just the way. Alrighty.
I had a lot of everything. I think I was dead regardless. Color got picked.
But it was so worth it. Crab is
It is so good.
The red ones, hello, unfortunately, are poisonous. Oh no, how could this have ever happened? But it's not as though you just like eat one and you completely perish. So I have some good news for some of you and some bad news for some others of you. So if the oysters had more than 2 red ones, unfortunately your little oyster bodies just couldn't handle it. Giant bummer, dog. So oysters 1, 2, and 3, you all sadly perished. Everyone take a moment to reflect on those poor oysters' lives. Crab number 2, you also bit the dust. I hate to tell you that. And the human, you had a lot, because it's the food chain, folks. Oh my gosh, we're biomagnifying. When things that are low on the food chain eat some stuff, they're like pretty much okay. We had a lot of okay oysters, but then the crabs got in there and they got a little hungry and they're eating multiple oysters. So all the weird goo that was in the oysters originally is now multiplying and hanging out in the crab. And then the human, with amazing crabbing skills, may I add, got a little greedy with the crabbing and is eating a ton of crabs. Oh, hello. So my poor human over here is eating the crabs. Why do people eat crabs? They're tasty. But the human may or may not have known that there is dioxin in these beautiful, beautiful waters that is this long. But why would somebody continue to fish in a place where they know that the water is polluted?
Money. It's where they don't get their food.
Yeah, they don't have options. They don't have money. It's where they live. We don't get to choose these things. So what do we do as environmentalists to understand that people sustenance fish and people do need to eat, but we also desperately don't want people eating dioxins? I'm looking more immediate than clean the screen because the Passaic's going to take a little bit longer.
Restrict the catch. No more than X number.
Yeah, they close them. They say you can't fish there.
One of the training programs, so we can restrict the catch, but what if our human is very, very hungry and just doesn't have money to buy food?
Connect them with food banks and other alternative sources.
We can connect them with food banks. We can do the trade-in, so you bring us some dirty, dirty crabs and we'll give you some pretty ones. So this entire activity didn't have humans in it originally in that ANJEE DEP thing that I read when I was working. It ended with herring gulls. And we all love herring gulls, but herring gulls don't really have families to feed in this capitalistic society. They're out there being socialists and herrings. So basically what I did, and the big takeaway from this entire session is I have an activity and all you had to think to yourself is humans? ? Because environmental justice is all the concept that there are environmental inequities facing specific communities of people, usually low-income Black and brown people. So if a game that I was playing ended with not humans, the simple answer is humans? ? question mark, especially when we're thinking about things like pollution and like non-point source pollution, point source pollution. When you like just Google environmental justice, there are a lot of like environmental justice issues, like heat island effect. It's really hot in cities. My deepest apologies. Who lives in cities? Primarily where there are the heat island effects, black and brown people of low income. And then you can also look at combined sewer overflows. Where are the like most common communities for combined sewer overflows? Black and brown communities of low income. So you can look at a list online or just like do some digging of like what are the environmental justice issues that are facing my area, and then you can see what like little tools you have in your tool bag to adapt them to then answer the question, humans, question mark. The other confounding issue to this is a lot of environmental like centers and people who do environmental work aren't working in these low income communities. They're working in like higher income, like more rural. You do have your pretty forests. So it's not as immediate as if you go out to the river near your apartment or near your house and you go fishing. Like these are the things that could happen. So then what I like to do when I did work with those communities, I did a lot of like how I worked with water. So it's like, how is the pollution that you're creating up at like the headwaters of this river compounding all the way down, and who's at the bottom of this river? It's Newark, it's Patterson, it is whatever the city near you is, because we have a lot of like coastal cities in this state. I don't know if folks noticed, but inside the krill there are letters. That's what I'm talking about. It matches the color of what each krill is, because you can go into a classroom and have kids that are colorblind and they cannot tell the difference. And that's just like, even if you are doing an activity that you're like specifically incorporating environmental justice into, there are things that you can do to make the activity more equitable, thinking about like disabilities, thinking about like the different backgrounds of folks that are coming to the table with certain levels of knowledge. And that's just something that you should like take the time to think about, even again, if you're not adapting a program to be specifically about environmental justice. Because I think for a lot of environmental education, you're like meeting groups for the first time, you don't really know what you're gonna get. So just like, my tip is to always try to be as accessible as possible. And the only reason that I really know about like the colorblind thing is because when I took mapping classes in college, they said that we could never do red, yellow, green color ramping because it doesn't make sense for people who are colorblind. So like that stuck with me. So if you like have something that sticks with you, talk to some of your coworkers because they may not have realized it. And I'm sure that there are things that all of you think of that like I have not encountered, so I don't incorporate it into the work that I did, but I don't do this anymore. But again, I promise I'm qualified. So that is the session.
So we had a good discussion about two activities that a lot of us already use. Dragonfly Pond and Some of the Parts, which are both wet activities from the Wild book and the wet book. And Dragonfly Pond, I use a ton and I've altered it already. And so you could easily talk about how when you cut all the pieces out and have to fit them together in that space, that no matter where you put the factory, someone is going to get the butt end of it, basically. And then you can even add elements to that, to both activities, where you challenge students to be economically strapped and still have to do similar tasks. So it would take a little bit of engineering, but it's a very inexpensive activity, and it's just paper and printouts and just cutting, and most students are excited to do that anyway. And both actually, even without alteration, have elements of justice in them. And so I guess we realized that we were using them anyway, so that's a great activity that all of us can adapt pretty easily.
Yeah, Some of the Parts is just an activity that talks about non-point source pollution moving downstream, and so the people at the top get to pass their crap down to the people at the bottom of the river, and sort of how it is in real life to a lot of extent. So I think the activity is already set for that. It's just how you would actually incorporate really bringing the social justice piece to the fore.
That was my backup activity if I couldn't find my
Some of the Parts is the best.
Came through.
One of the benefits of informal education that we can kind of, we have a little more play and a little more freedom in what we can do. As long as we hit some of the major standards, we have a little more freedom. It's great. That's why I love informal ed.
Well, I guess everyone can like stretch their gams for a bit. So what's happening next?
Thank you. I'm going to give you your crab back.